Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this evening's panel session, The Business Analysis Profession in Australia, the Challenges and Opportunities. I'm Toby Travanor and I'll be your moderator this evening, and I'll be chatting with IIBA Australia Chapter Board members who will provide us with a perspective on the profession. Now, of course, I'm not the only person who is allowed to ask questions. You are more than welcome to pose any questions you like at the team today. Please ask any questions to any of the panelists via the live Q&A function in the conference platform. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not a business analyst, but I've worked with many of them, and I know I've got three of the best business analysts within Australia today. Joining us are the current president of the IIBA Australia Chapter, Hugh Peterken. Welcome, Hugh.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Good evening again, and thank you. Our past president on the right-hand side, Damian Wilson.
Hi, Toby, and everyone else.
And in the middle, the director of the education portfolio, Briana Ertanin. Now, all of our... hello, Brianna, welcome.
Hello, Toby, and thank you for having me. Hello, everyone.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, our panelists have all worked long-term within the profession. They've had high levels of engagement within the profession in the work environment, but also, most importantly, within the IIBA Australia chapter. And I'm looking forward to some refreshing perspectives on the values of and the value of business analysis and its critical roles to businesses transitioning into the new economy as we're seeing at the moment. Let's start with you, Hugh. Welcome. Hugh, you're the CEO of iLoop and also IIBA Australia Chapter President, and one of these people who's been recognised internationally as an expert in information technology and business processes. Now, I could go on and on about how amazing you are, but why don't I just start with picking a couple of bits and pieces of your career. You've held senior roles in engineering, ICT and consulting, but more recently, you were the CIO for the International Red Cross based in Geneva. And also, most recently, you've been CIO for the largest health service in Queensland, the Metro North Hospital and Health Service, in addition to running your own consultancy. So let's start with a simple question. What's it like, and how does it differ between Geneva and Australia?
Toby, between the two, it's a hard choice. They're two of the most beautiful countries in the world, as far as I can tell. The life in Geneva was just outstanding, being in the heart of the United Nations, in this picture postcard perfect place. I had an amazing time there, being there for about 5 years. But at the end of the day, I actually decided on Australia and Brisbane as being the place where I wanted to finally rest my head. So I think I'm pleased that I came back, but there's certainly things I still miss in Switzerland.
What about the way people in each of the countries focus on business analysis as a profession or a function, important function within a business?
Well, I think so I had the opportunity when I was CIO of the Red Cross. We were present in I think 45 countries, and we had a whole range of staff. We actually had very few people who were nominated as business analysts in the team. I think internationally the profession is developing. It's maybe a lot more developed in the developed countries than in the developing countries where we were mainly working. So the business analysis profession is even since I've worked then has come an awful long way in terms of carving out its place in the world. And I think it looks very different today from my time when I was in Switzerland.
Well, we're going to certainly talk all about that today and how it's clearly seen as being more of an impact outside of just the COO function, but up to the CEO function. Now, speaking of somebody who might even get up there, our centre guest, the way we're positioned at the moment, is Briana Ertanon, who's business analyst, practice lead at Toyota Financial Services, and as I mentioned before, is the IIBA Australia Chapter Education Director. Now, Briana currently leads the PM and the BA practice for Toyota Financial Services, and one of these people who lives and breathes the future of business analysis, and I suppose the opportunities that it brings in upskilling professionals who are taking on this role. And that's a nice lead-in to say, how are you finding the role of Director of Education within the IIBA Australia Chapter, Briana?
Well, Toby, I think it has been a very big journey in the last 2 years, because when I look back at the past 2 years, the education portfolio has developed incredibly. We have introduced 2 absolutely new products, and with both of these new products/services for our members, we are first in class and first in the world. It's the Agile Analysis Study Group and now the new Business Data Analytics Study Group. And to give you a bit of a perspective what we are talking about in impact for our members, last year we've serviced with different products and services almost 400 individuals around Australia. That's basically half of the active members in good standing of the Australia chapter came and had some sort of a tangible benefit from the services that we develop and offer to members. And the most amazing aspect is that all our services are 100% volunteer-led. So imagine how amazing is that?
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic news. And I think one of the things that comes to mind, and I don't mean to sound cynical at all, but this is a great way of educating business analysts to join Toyota Financial Services, perhaps, or any organisation.
Any organisation. And one observation as a director is that we do a lot of the core interest comes from people who are in business analysis roles or have direct aspirations for that.
Yeah.
But more and more, I see that the study groups, especially in our corporate partners, they attract attention across all business units, and they attract attendees from areas which technically have nothing to do with the strict business analysis job.
That's
and
true.
title.
That's true. If I was to ask all of you whether you studied business analysis or you've just had a whole plethora of career development, I think everybody who's online watching will probably go the latter, to say, you know what, we've learned through just the general business of knowledge gathering in general. Now, speaking of somebody who has gathered a lot of knowledge, is the third person on our panel tonight. And I'm going to single him out for a moment, because many people during COVID lockdown have looked rather unruly because they haven't been able to get to a hairdresser. But one of the three musketeers, or indeed D'Artagnan, better known as Damian Wilson, Business Analyst Practice Manager for Toll Group and IIBA Australia Chapter Past President, has thrown that stereotype out the window, and I can say is looking magnificent in his hirsuteness. Can I say that, Damian?
Look, I appreciate that. That's it is the longest my hair has ever been, and that's a lockdown to thank for that. So I'm still negotiating with my better half about whether that's a long-term plan or something that ends at the end of 2020 when we can put a horrible year behind us.
Well,
we'll see how it works out.
I think you should keep it, because it's a good thing in what has been probably a very, very tough year for Toll. And if I can mention, not only have we been in the middle of a pandemic, but the beginning of the year wasn't all that flash for Toll either, was it?
Well, Toll, of course, is involved in transport and logistics, and so it's moving stuff all around Australia and all around the world in about 40 different countries. There's tens of thousands of people in the organisation. At the beginning of the year, I thought this would be a fantastic year. I had a wonderful holiday booked. First stop was Milan. And just before I went, I found out that was sort of European ground zero for coronavirus outbreaks. and things just kept getting worse from there. So we've had bushfires, global pandemics. Toll's had a whole change of its executive team. And of course, people who keep their eye on the news would have seen we've been through 2 cyber attacks so far just this year.
Yes.
So that causes enormous disruption.
Well, and it's those, what some people might say, COVID normal day-to-day activities nowadays that can create great challenges to business analysts. And look, I'd like to, as you can imagine, ladies and gentlemen, we do plan some of these things, but I'd like to stray off the plan right away. I know this has been a fantastic conference from what our 3 panelists have already mentioned to me today, but we've already had one question from our viewers, and I think this sums up what we've been talking about already. And the question is, when BA roles in organisations are relatively new, or where organisations are unaware or unclear of what BA activities are, in other words, they're not engaged early enough, or they're just presumed to be a documenter, as an example, what would be good steps or actions or tips that BAs can take? And this is probably coming from the people who are maybe have been thrown into this role. And this is about education. Brianna, we might start with you.
Well, very common scenario, not a unique problem. Let's start with that. So, couple of things come to mind. Firstly, the better you are with your capabilities and competencies, the more likely it is that you will impress the stakeholders and you will create a brand. And by you being good at your job, you will start increasing the profile and demonstrating that having someone like you as a BA engaged early is a good thing for stakeholders. Basically, just demonstrating with your own actions what's in it for the other party. So this is working ground up, so to speak. Thinking about how you can influence, for example, an organization which has very low visibility and awareness of what a good BA and BA practice brings to the table. That's why you have people like Hugh, Damian, myself, and the entire community of IIBA volunteers engage with us. Share your challenge with us and think how you can invite, for example, and bring to our events people from your organization, your managers, your stakeholders, or how we can, for example, come and do something tailored for your organization.
So that almost sounds like it's the opportunity to utilise the IIBA to support the function or the profession within an organisation. And Hugh, with no disrespect to you, you look like you've been around a while. And I don't mean that in a bad way, I mean that in a positive way. But somebody who's relatively, let's say, new to an organisation, or they're new to work in a business as well, what are some tips that you might be able to offer them to say, in the same way that Brianna's spoken about, how do you lift the focus of business analysis when you might not have decades worth of experience and you haven't been the CIO of an international organisation?
Yeah, well, every profession has a transition through that profession, starting when you coming out of your education, moving through more senior roles, etc. And I don't think business analysis is particularly different from that. You can deliver huge value very early on in your career, and I don't think we should dismiss that at all. I think that as business analysts develop in their experience and capability, they don't always necessarily develop into those leadership roles. And I think there's probably a fair criticism that the leadership groups in Australian industry isn't very well peppered with business analysts or people from the business analysis profession. And that's something that we would desperately like to improve. I mean, a lot of presentations already at this conference have focused on opportunities for personal career development, opportunities to move into leadership positions. But I don't think anyone's actually going to do it for you. I think everyone's got to get out there and they've got to do the best they can in their career. And I think part of that, and one area that can really help them is that the IIBA is an incredibly useful resource in that. Those people who have been at this conference this week will have seen the quality of the content, the information that's provided, the enthusiasm of the participants. And for business analysis to progress, we need that confidence. We need to build our confidence. I see it amongst the people in the conference in BAPW. I see it in those businesses where they've got highly developed business analysis capabilities. I think it's much more difficult, as the questioner referred, where you come in as a lone BA, where it's not a well-known profession, where you're suddenly asked to deliver value and you're probably not given the structure that's required. So bringing that structure into place, which IIBA can help with, but I think there's some real challenges there.
Now, thank you, Hugh. Now, Damian, you are previous past president. As such, and it must be interesting to go back solidly into an organisational role. How have you seen, since moving back purely into the sector in a day-to-day basis, how have you seen this focus on business analysis potentially changing to the level of what Hugh's just been mentioning?
Yeah, well, there's been a lot of change. Obviously, when I was first involved many years ago, we were two versions of the BABOK behind where we are today. So the whole definition and understanding of business analysis has evolved, certainly in terms of the standards. But Toby, I wonder if I could add something to the question that was asked, because I think it's a really interesting one that a lot of BAs face, and I've certainly faced it myself. And what I would suggest is that there is one knowledge area in the BABOK that's particularly helpful in the case of, how do you set yourself up to be able to influence and be taken seriously as a business analysis professional, and that's the planning and monitoring chapter. So a lot of BAs get worried about the idea of taking ownership of a plan for their own work, because they think, the planning's done by a project manager. What happens if I make a promise that I can't end up keeping? I think for the people who actually sit down and plan things out, a couple of things happen. First of all their worst fears don't happen. They don't end up in a terrible, stressful situation. In fact, they feel that their life and their job is more under their control than it ever has been. They're able to manage expectations of stakeholders a lot better. And they find that project managers and other people they're seeking to influence are very much relieved to have someone with actual expertise in the area of business analysis putting together a reasonable plan so that the right business analysis gets done and they don't have to go home and worry at night about whether the project's going to be a terrible failure because they don't really know exactly what to ask the BAs to do. So if you're able to find your little piece of the overall plan for delivery and take ownership of that, I think that's one real key to being able to establish yourself in a situation where you're either right at the beginning of a project, setting it up for success, or even if you've missed that opportunity, it's never too late to make some kind of recovery in the area of business analysis. I've seen it happen even very late in projects.
Damian, I think that's very sound advice you've given there, because look, we can't expect PMs to know everything and to know every part of every role of the project, the major project that they may be working on. And look, quite frankly, if you can go in, and I don't know, I may be being a little bit flippant here, but you can take in almost like a BA process that you've learned through a program at the IIBA and say to the PM, this is what I'd like to be doing. Here is my outline of what I want to be doing over the next 3 months. That's often just enough assurance levels for the person to go, oh, thank goodness, that's one person I don't need to worry about. Go for it. Is that what you're talking about?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. It changes the whole way that you're perceived. You're a confident business analysis professional. You're not just some, we know what testers are and we know what developers are, and we know what change managers are, and I guess anything we don't quite understand what it is, we'll just call it business analysis. If you're able to sort of take yourself out of the category of miscellaneous, where you might be just the documenter, as it says in the question, say, no, actually, I've understood who the stakeholders are, I know which processes are being impacted. I think we're going to need to run this series of workshops using these particular techniques to produce these outputs. And that is how business analysis can contribute to the success of your program and make you successful. You'd be amazed at how people will stand back and let you make them successful.
Yeah. Look, there's a very simple analogy to this, and quite right now it's probably not an issue for many, and I'm going to switch professions dramatically, many journalists, as an example, to come up with news, because there's news happening all the time. But in quiet news days, if you're a PR person for an organisation, you go, here's something that's really interesting and it's written nicely, you hand it to a journalist and they go, thank goodness, that's one article I don't have to write. And it's a little bit like that, to the extent of saying, I know what I'm doing. Now, Hugh, I'm going to go back to you for a second, because it's a nice transition from what we've been talking about on not only showing skill levels, assurance levels, and I suppose driving a business through business analysis. But the questions for you is, and somebody's very ambitious here, I love it. It says, Hugh, you've been a CEO, and I'd like to know how business analysts can sell their capabilities to become a CIO. So rather than, I'm the head of development, or I'm the tech ops manager or something like that, or even the DBA or whatever, how can a BA become a CIO? What do you think can this become a career path for BAs?
Absolutely, it's a career path. I think there's a career path into just about any of the the C-level executive, and to get there is going to take a lot more than just being a good BA, of course. Like there's a whole range of other competencies and capabilities and considerations around things like integrity and the like. It's a very, very broad church that you've got to get to join an executive and be successful. I think BAs have got a huge advantage when they start to look at how they get into promoted areas. I often think that, like, if you want to get up in a business, you've just got to make your manager proud of you. All right, that's probably the best advice I could give. And BAs often have great real knowledge of how a business works. They not only know how it works, they can analyse how it could be improved. And that puts them in a fantastic position to be able to influence upwards in an organisation. And as you keep feeding that upward influence with those good ideas, you're going to be recognised. And so long as you can plug in the other components that you require for progression, like your business analysis skill set is one of them, the underlying competencies, the soft skills, which has been talked about a lot this week as being absolutely critical. I think when you actually move into the C-suite, it's quite surprising that you find other areas actually come into play, particularly around, as I said, integrity, maybe empathy, the way a C-suite works, probably from the inside, probably isn't how you think it should work from the outside. But everyone should be aspiring to get there. Sure. Absolutely, Toby.
And it does sound like it's one of those roles that works horizontally far more than some of the other roles within, let's say, in this case, an IT department, but because you're going to see what's happening across marketing, you're going to see what's happening in operations, you're going to see what's happening in finance, as well as technology and so on. And I think you've just described, and look, I'm going to sound like an academic here, and I was at one stage on the adjunct faculty at AGSM, so it just sneaks out, I'm sorry to say. But there was some research done by Berry et al. Out of Texas A&M and Duke universities that basically looked at what organisations were looking for from service provision internally and externally, and it was reliability, you do what you say you're going to do, assurance, you know what you're talking about, tangibles, the stuff we can see supports what you're saying, empathy, I understand your perspective and your situation, and responsiveness, which is I'm able to react with the necessary speed, not too fast or not too slow. That, to me, sounds like it encompasses what the BA role is.
Couldn't agree more, Toby. I think, the BAs, as I say, have got that position in a company where they should have a head start into just about any role. We should all be there feeling confident about our abilities and fighting to get into those leadership positions. And maybe in 10 years' time, it will be a discussion that we just don't need to have, because there's enough BAs in leadership roles that it's a recognised thing.
A nice little segue before I throw another question at Brianna. Maybe there's going to be I don't know, you've talked about the C-suite, maybe there's going to be a CBA somewhere along the line. A chief business analyst. Well, certainly the old electrical companies and generation companies had a chief engineer, let's face it. So You never know. Brianna, there's another fantastic question come from our audience today, which is about how do we use this platform? And I'm assuming what we're talking about is IIBA in general, as well as the conference, to engage people outside of this profession so they can understand the importance of business and systems analyst roles, and to actually organisationally create a better career path for them. What are your thoughts on that?
Several thoughts. Firstly, I am a believer that career path and development, it is in your own hands. You are the person who is in charge and accountable. So you can't really outsource this anywhere. But when it comes to support, IIBA and IIBA Australian Chapter have a plethora of opportunities. Let's again going back to the fact that we are a volunteer-driven organization. So you want to influence? Join us as a volunteer. There are plenty of opportunities, and that's the best way to immerse yourself and also to influence the change that you'd like to see. We work within the community, constantly developing services, constantly thinking about how we can expand our reach to our community and beyond the direct membership community. We have, for example, a number of corporate partners and members here in Australia, and we work more and more with them to make sure that they make the best out of their corporate membership, because there is an enormous IP and wealth of information and resources on IIBA global website. So it is just a matter of pulling these resources together and adding personal touch and personal passion. And the personal touch and personal passion, it's basically us, the people who are on this call, the people who are watching this panel. So you don't have to wait for a government decision. It is absolutely within the power of each one of you to get in touch with your local branch and start influencing.
Yeah. Actually, can I extend on that? Thank you, Brianna. To Damian, you've moved from past president back into the sector again. Do you think there's a role for the executive within the IIBA to be invited into an organisation to talk to either its leadership team or even a wider perspective to talk about the importance of business analysis in an organisation?
Look, certainly, and I know that I've done that many times in the past in different places. I've done that at ANZ. I've been to graduation ceremonies at Swinburne University where people are getting certificates coming out of their IIBA training. So that's always something that's available. Sometimes they have sort of professional roadshows at large organisations. At National Australia Bank, I took the time to man a stand there for a day at one point. So that's always something that is available for people to talk about, what's the value of standards, what's, how do you develop yourself in your career? That's definitely been found to be useful in lots of different organisations in the past.
Now, Damian, and to Hugh and Brianna, we're getting a lot of questions coming through, so I'm going to just keep ploughing through these because they're really excellent. Now, this is one here that, Damian, you could probably answer as I think it's almost an extension of what you've been saying. Do you think there are significant differences between a BA role in the public versus the private sector? And if so, what tips can you provide the people who are watching tonight?
Well, obviously, the main difference in the style of business between those two areas is that one's more driven by a focus on achieving profits in the private sector, but I think there's actually more difference within those sectors than there is between those sectors. And one of the reasons I say that is that business analysts are very interested in delivering value to stakeholders. Now, that might take a slightly different form, but what's important for you is for you to be able to easily understand what value means for your organisation. I know that in some parts of the public sector, there is a greater sense of purpose and clarity around what value means than in other parts. I remember once I ran a workshop for a whole range of different departments across Victorian government. And the reason why they all came together is that they all managed property, but they all had different systems. And so, the people planning the farmland wanted to talk to the people who knew if it was going to be flooded once every 100 years. And they wanted to make sure they didn't put the toxic waste dump next to the primary school. And so they had to come together. And so when I was talking to them about what their needs and what they actually use their information for, they all pointed at a different area of government. And I was waiting for someone to talk about, well, what's the value to the public? That's the P in public servant. But it didn't come out of that particular workshop. So, so if you're I have worked for other areas like defence, for example. They're very clear about what they're about. So I think that's the important thing, regardless of whether you're in public or private, is that you want to be able to home in on what is the core mission of the organisation, and then be able to sort of trace the changes or improvements that you're involved in back to that objective of the business that defines what value means for them.
Yeah, it does sound like there's an underlying responsibility for BA in there, which is to be able to add value. Not only the way people describe it as being, I might call it tactically, but also strategically as well. And I'm sure there's variations in that. Can I just say, Hugh's looking a little relaxed, so I'm going to hit him with this question this time. And this is a question for all. We talk about what's right for the organisation that we're working with, and how much of support the IIBA can be in doing that. But what other platforms can we offer? So a question here is, why don't we have a platform where BAs can actually come together to chat over the challenges and opportunities under the umbrella? So it sounds like, is there almost like a less formal version of getting together, so that people can just go, hey, I've seen that before, here's what I did. What are your thoughts there?
So I see that as an incredibly powerful sort of technique in anyone's career, where they can network with people having similar experiences, be able to, if not exactly reach out for advice, at least get some counselling on how people have maybe tackled these things previously. I think IIBA Australia Chapter does offer that in spades generally. The COVID-19 outbreak has essentially eliminated our face-to-face meetings, but they'll come back, and within every capital city there are strong networks of business analysts who now have an opportunity to talk together and reach out. There's other programs that we're running, such as mentoring programs, which can help with that in a more formal way, but personally, I think the absolute highest value and the thing that's most important in professions in the current workplace is this network effect. The fact that if you know people who know things, or maybe know people who know people who know things, right, if you can start to gather that into your arrow of your quiver of tools, that's one of the things that will drive your career. It's going to send you upwards and onwards, because it is so important to being really good at what you do, as well as like having those contacts that can either take you to the next step, or maybe make a sale, or maybe find the next person who can come into the business, those sorts of things.
I know that's a very presidential answer. And at one point you're going to say, somebody make it happen. And that's probably going to be you, Brianna. Is there a way, do you think, what are your thoughts on being able to put together something which is kind of a formal place that's run informally? Very agile by the sounds of things too, in one sense.
And a wonderful idea. So here I am again reaching out to the person with this proposal to get in touch with us and just pitch the idea in a little bit more detail. We will develop it into a mini business case. We will find sponsorship, etc., etc. But the question will come down to one passionate person or a group of passionate people who will actually put this together and look after it.
Well, Brianna,
because we don't have an IT help desk to support it, but we do create opportunities for ideas like that. So just put, you know how we have the whole support hub and information hub on the platform? Use that, connect with us, connect with me directly, and after this week, I will get in touch and we will be working on this as a tiny baby project to be launched early next year.
Well, the person who asked that question, I won't mention your name, but I can see your name here. You know who we're talking about. Brianna has just opened up and said, just get in touch with me on that one. And look, here's a little bit of a shout out to the IIBA Information Hub on the conference portal. You'll find a lot of things on there, not just Brianna's contact details, but a lot of things, including some of the education that's being run. Hey, let's ask another question. I'm talking about the conference, and this is for all of you here. Has there been anything that you've seen at the conference so far that's kind of surprised you or made you go, and made you stop and think? How about you, Damian?
Well, look, I've been really happy to see it develop into this state to begin with, because, you know, many years ago, this was like one of my big dreams that we would be the leading conference in Australia for business analysis profession. For a long time, that wasn't the case. There was 2 other conferences that would travel around, and I think that they started to sort of decline in success and activity, to the point where I think the last one I went to was in Sydney, and I had fewer attendances than even just the group that comes to one of the sessions in this virtual conference. So that's something that, you know, I think I'm very pleased to see, and I'm sure that the BA community in Australia is very proud of, particularly the people who've worked hard as IIBA volunteers to make this happen. So
I think that's terrific.
It looks great. And here's another little bit of extra insight. My wife works in the events space. She works in a physical events management environment. And she's been very interested to look over my shoulder and see what a good, well-run virtual event looks like. And she's extremely impressed, as someone who is probably more experienced in this than I am.
Well, as somebody who's also worked very heavily in the physical conference space, I wish your wife a lot of good wishes there, and hopefully we'll be meeting in person sometime quickly in the future.
Toby, can I take up on that question?
You can, of course. Because I straight away anyway. Yeah.
I have really enjoyed the 3 days of the conference so far, and they've been so stimulating. And I came up with a few things that I thought were really interesting. The first is the international flavour of the conference. So like we're getting to this conference some really high quality speakers from all over the world. In particular, we've got very strong contributions from New Zealand, with the chapter in New Zealand joining us. We've got a strong contribution from South Africa, and not only from the chapter, but also I note from a number of presenters. We had a fantastic presentation this morning from Angela Wick, who's based in Santa Clara in California, or is it Santa Barbara? So the international flavour is one thing. The second thing is I've seen a lot on lean and agile. And one of the things that's really interesting to me here is the way lean and agile is maturing, and there seems to be almost an agglomeration towards the lean agile approach and some best practice. It's definitely, in my opinion, moving into the I think it's called the slope of enlightenment in the Gartner hype cycle. So I think that's the second one, and the third one is I'm seeing a lot of presenters with great confidence about what the BA profession can do for business. And that's a very strong focus. Like, I think businesses are changing in their focus. They're changing away, as someone was said at one of the presentations, they're changing away from a schedule and cost focus to a value and velocity focus. And BAs are right there on the arrowhead by pushing this sort of focus forward. So there's a real confidence there, and a real like self-appraisal within the business that we're important for organisations as they do their digital transformations, as they move into the new world. So those are my three takeouts so far.
Thank you, Hugh. Look, I think everybody has to be international nowadays, and I love the fact that you've mentioned that lean and agile is no longer just like an excuse term for just doing things quickly. There's rigor and process behind this. It's driven by BAs, I think, and that leads us into that last comment about how important the function within is for any organisation. Brianna, you've been sitting in the conference as well. Has anything surprised you, or been something that you've gone, oh wow, that's something I really need to work on?
Well, I am actually overwhelmingly happy with the conference, because I'm looking back and I'm thinking, God, this happened in less than 4 months. This was put together in less than 4 months. And I am comparing and thinking, like, kudos to Damian, because Damian has many years of contribution and hard work in building up the physical original business analysis professional days across Australia. And when you look at the conference, this conference doesn't feel like something that we are doing for the first time with a short lead time of 4 weeks. It's kind of like one of those leaps where we've just, we had a dream, and the dream happened. Of course, it happened with a lot of effort from a lot of people. But I'm just enjoying it and marveling that we have this happening in October 2020, when quite a few other traditional big conferences that happen around this time of the year are actually skipping 2020 because they just set too hard.
Yeah, too hard. Yeah. Well, congratulations on all of you, not only for putting this together, but for being part of it as well. Look, the next 3 questions have a certain theme, which is what the role of BA is all about. And Damian, I'd like to start with you on the first part of this, because the question asks, I was wondering, after so much experience in various industries, how often do you find a need for a BA to be updated with all the technologies that we're talking about, including what we've been talking about just a second ago with agile technologies, but also something that's close to your heart, cyber security these days? So, I mean, do we see that the role of the BA having to evolve into the future with all these changes that are taking place?
I look at definitely. I think that the role of the BA has always been evolving. There's a kind of a core set of competencies, but then there's some things that you can add to that if you're looking to build specialization in different areas. And I think for a long time we've known that there's been BAs that specialize in data or user experience or process. And even, you know, one of the questions was also talking about BA career paths evolving. And I think that that's also been the case for a long time. You know, when you talk about, you know, who is your head of mergers and acquisitions, the director of strategy, or the you know, person leading innovation, they might not be called business analysts, but they're probably using those skills and might well have come from that kind of background.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and in fact, Damian, there's a question here that says, look, with somebody with deep skills, in particular, some of the ones that you've spoken about there, but also in ERP systems or technology, if you think about the depth of skills, do you find that as you go more senior in roles, that rather than being specific in one area, you need to have a much more broader BA skill set to be able to be considered to move up in seniority?
I think that it depends what you're looking for, right? If seniority is the thing you're looking for, then I think that maybe the generalist approach might actually be an easier path, but that's if seniority is the big thing for you. You might be able to earn more money than the senior person with a big investment in an area of specialization, right? So if you're the person who knows everything there is to know about the core systems of a banking and finance platform, you can make a lot of money out of that specialist knowledge.
Sure.
But if you're going to a C-level role, one of the advantages that BAs have over other professional pathways is that they often have the big picture view of the business more than anyone from any specific role knows. Yeah. They understand the systems, they understand the business at multiple layers, and they can see how roles interconnect with each other. And sometimes that gives people the confidence that, well, this person understands the business so well, they can, you know, they can be effective in leading it. But I wouldn't say that that necessarily puts you in a better financial position. It might not make you any more comfortable in retirement than if you went down the, you know, become an expert in SAP or Oracle or something like that.
But it might give you a different sort of job role that you might enjoy. And somebody who has done that is you, Hugh. How did you find your career changing as you, let's say, went up the strategy ladder?
So I'd like to say I'm sort of on my fourth career now, and I wasn't really any good at them in the first three. So they weren't in your CV. I didn't read that in your CV. So I've done many roles. You know, I've done engineering. I've actually done sales roles as well, and you know, all of that is grist for the mill, and it helps build your experience and your knowledge. And you know, working internationally is something that gives you a particular maybe extra set of capabilities. So I think getting all that on board is important. I think the requirements of that formal education space can't be ignored, though. I think these days, you know, they talk about, you know, the BA skill set. Maybe when they talk about BA bot really being table stakes, you've then got to have your specialisation in terms of the vertical you're in, whether you're in finance or insurance or healthcare or whatever. Yeah. And you're probably also going to need a specialisation in the technique area, you know, whether it's agile or data analysis, cybersecurity. So the BAs are actually being constantly challenged with that requirement continually update their education, and it's quite a large load put on them. And I'm not sure that I see many businesses going to the 4+1 work week, where 4 days are for work and 1 is for study. But that's really what you need to be successful.
It's 5+1 at the moment, isn't it? Or 5 plus 2 hours a night. Now, to all of our panelists, I'm going to apologise in advance. I'm going to be a little bit ruder now and jump in, because we're going to try and get through a number of questions. But a nice segue from what you've just mentioned there, Hugh, and I'll ask this of Brianna, which is, how do you actually build a program to educate the BA team on things that Hugh's been talking about, like agile extensions or like BABOK version 3. The comment here is we've got 170 BAs in our area. However, we don't have any internal role-specific onboarding or training for BAs. So where does one start to make that happen?
By getting in touch with their local branch. I happened to have a look at this question, and I will reach out directly to Zara, who asked the question. But in short, we already have this in place. We do have the materials and the syllabus and the structure to run BABOK and Agile Extension, and nowadays business data analytics, study groups and study courses. And we are very open to help organizations like, for example, the organization Zara is coming from is a platinum corporate member. We are here to actually help you and tell you, you have all this at your fingertips. It's part of your membership. Come to us and we will help you to get these resources. Spoken
like the head of the director of education, and rightly so.
You don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's already there, and you are in the right place. So let's just connect.
Brianna, can we go further? Though? What are we doing towards engaging with people at university level to start grooming BAs right when they're still studying as undergrads? You know, the comment here is get them in young. How can we influence uni students to take up business analysis as a career? In other words, know about it before they join an organisation and fall into the role.
So again, this is a big ticket item. And this is an area where in the last 2 years, IIBA Global have put a lot of attention and emphasis. There is now a global academic program. And you will be surprised how many of the Australian tertiary institutions are already engaged with this academic program. I know universities across Sydney, Brisbane and Melbourne, and there is a lot of work going on with faculties. A month ago, Sydney hosted a virtual event which was specifically also extended to, I think, Macquarie, TAFE and University of New South Wales, and there were 70 or 80 registrations from students. So again, we are working hard in those areas. It's always a matter of capacity. You want to contribute? You know what I'm going to say. Put your hand up and join.
I can see that Brianna now is recruiting, which is absolutely fantastic.
I am always recruiting, Toby.
Yeah.
Hugh,
what are your comments on this?
So I just want to add to that, look, I think you've just got to take a wander into the sponsors lounge, and you will find that there, as well as the IIBA, there's a lot of commercial companies, but particularly our gold and silver sponsors, who are really well placed to deliver on best practice business analysis, whether it's in setting up a business analysis centre of excellence, or providing best practice consulting, or providing best practice business analysis tools. So it's not just IIBA doing the heavy lifting here. We've got some great commercial partners who are out there driving the profession forward as well.
Well, one of the difficulties that people say within any degree that you studied, that is something like 50% of what you studied in your first year is completely out of date by the time you're graduating 3 years later. And so that brings up a nice little segue into the fact that, you know, the role of BA is an evolving one, and the future challenges are going to be quite different. Now, many have been involved in activities that aren't necessarily BA tasks, like, you know, testing or writing change comms or other activities like that. So if the role is an evolving one, what are your thoughts on BAs getting caught up in some of those admin tasks that nobody else wants to have, versus what the role might be in the future? Is it just a business analyst, or is it a data and analytics person, as an example? Is there an agile business analyst, a digital business analyst? You know, what are all the variations of BA that we might see in the future? So it's kind of a two-pronged question. Notice I didn't choose anyone, so I'm waiting for you to stick up your hand. Hugh,
can I have a, so I remember when I actually was chair of Brisbane branch, I used to think sometimes our networking sessions were counselling sessions, and it was BAs who were complaining about project managers who got them to take notes, etc. And I think that still happens, but it's happening less and less. I think the you know, BAs, and in any team you have to do what you have to do in order to get the project across the line. But BAs have a certain area of value, and if they're off taking notes or writing, you know, documentation which should be done by a document writer, then they're not doing that important business analysis work. So I think it's incumbent on everyone to be you know, dealing with that within their own context, but putting out the message that the business analysis work is really important. I haven't yet met a BA who feels that they're not given enough work to do, because business analysis is a detailed thing. There is always lots and lots of stuff to do in BA, and we don't need to be burdened by this other stuff. If it's not adding as much value as the BA, we need to push back on it.
And look, it does sound like if we're driving this, and I think this is a comment you made earlier, which is if you're driving how an organisation or the leadership team should be using BAs as an example, then you're kind of setting up what your own career path can end up looking like, or the value that you're providing. So that's a nice question, and I do apologise to everybody who's doing providing us some fantastic questions. You would have noticed that I'm trying to often mould two or three into one. But this is a nice one to start to finish up with, which is, what is the IIBA looking to do or achieve in the next 2 to 5 years? I'll start with you, Hugh, and then, you know, not to talk about you, Damian, but you are past president. I might go to Brianna next. So, Hugh, to start off with, what do you think is going to happen in the next 2 to 5 years?
It's a bit difficult to answer this question without giving a little bit of history on our trajectory. And I think where we've come from over the last couple of years is we've built an era of sustainability in the chapter, right? So the chapter itself has figured out what it's trying to do. It's gone out and made commitments to do that, and it started delivering on them, and it knows that it can deliver on them with sustainably. And, you know, this conference is one of those things that you know, we said we would do this, we've gone out, we've done it, as well as, you know, a whole range of other things we've done. Brianna, in her area with education, has massively increased the number of study groups, online study groups. You know, we've introduced new services. I think that that looking forward, like there's a certain amount we can do as an organisation in terms of the board, being a volunteer board. But I think our aspirations is really around getting the BA community sufficiently enthused about their own profession, that they can organically grow it themselves, right?
Yeah,
so to move away from the board having to do this project, do that project, like create the environments, create the networks, give that overarching you know, set of capabilities which allow that bottom-up growth and development of the network into something much more substantial.
Thank you, Hugh. Now, Brianna, I know that your attitude is just bring it on, right? Bring it on. If you need it, let's do something about it. But you must have some plans in your head as well, especially for education, but also being a board member. What are your thoughts over the next 2 to 5 years?
So, as Hugh mentioned about sustainability, we are a very different organisation than what we were only a couple of years ago. So we are an organisation of members, of people, and our raison d'etre is our community. So the big ticket items are items such as developing further the relationship with our academic membership and academic partners. Also broadening the connection with our corporate members and partners, and making sure that they are taking the full benefit of being members, so that then they are better employers of the BA community, and the BA community can flourish.
You know what, Brianna, what we talk about a lot of the time in service delivery, and especially in professional service delivery, sometimes the outcome, well, not sometimes, pretty well all the time, the outcome of the success of that service is not just dependent on the service provider, but it's on the skill and the attitude of the person receiving the service. And so any education you can of the business itself to be able to create a better knowledge of how to use BA effectively, I think is going to be really important. And Damian, I'm not going to let you off the hook here. As somebody who, can kind of relax and talk from the outside, what do you want to see as a representative of the members over the next 2 to 5 years coming from the IIBA?
Look, I think that the IIBA has built a really strong foundation that it can use to set itself up to be a much stronger influencer into government and private industry. So in the past, internationally, not just in Australia, IIBA has been very focused on members as individuals. I think that over time there's been an increasing recognition of the opportunity to influence at the corporate level and the government level, and I think that I can see the IIBA having more and more influence in that area to advocate for the profession on behalf of members so that everyone benefits.
You know what, there's so much that can be done with a professional organisation as the IIBA is, and I think to sum up what we've heard today is that it does come down to the members being clear what they're looking for to add some value, but also, as we saw earlier, maybe sticking your hand up every once in a while to say, look, how can I support this? Can I just add to this some of the comments that have come through that I think you should all be very proud of as an example? People are looking at how do we build the profession so that, as you and I spoke earlier, Hugh, that maybe there will be a chief business analyst happening in the future. We also spoke at many occasions about how do we influence at the other end of the spectrum with universities and so on. People commenting about attending the professional day last year and lucky enough to attend it this year, and the comment was, thank you to Neil, that I've enjoyed the virtual one more. It adds more flexibility. You're allowed to see more presentations. You get back to watching the ones that you may have missed and so on, and looking forward to seeing if some version of this might be the way forward. And along with this also, Kelly has mentioned, this is the best conference ever. And hoping that we might be able to have something along this way. This is only possible, ladies and gentlemen, when you have the right people being part of a conference like this. And I'd like to take the opportunity, if you would join me in doing a virtual round of applause. I don't know how we're going to do that. I'm going to put my hands together on the screen to our panellists this evening. Our current president, Hugh Peterken, our Director of the Education Portfolio, Brianna Ertanin, and of course, thank you, and of course, past President Damian Wilson. Thank you very much for your insight today, and everybody else, thank you so much for all of the questions. I'm sorry we weren't able to get to them all, but we know that you're probably hanging to have some dinner with your family tonight and talk about what we've just learned. I've been Toby Travener. It's been my absolute pleasure to have a chat with the executive tonight. We'll see you again tomorrow night with another panel, but in the meantime, get out there and continue talking about how important the profession of BA is within your organisations. I hope you enjoy conference tomorrow, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow night.
Good night.